Our journey begins. It is day 147, October 25, 2024, and it is such a beautiful morning here. The leaves are absolutely stunning. Um, there's this little pond down here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but a little pond back there with the leaves reflecting. It's just absolutely beautiful around here. Anyway, so this is going to be a pretty lengthy discussion about sort of what I'm feeling at this point, at this stage in my life. Because I want to document it, I want to be able to know how it felt to be at this stage, to sort of really express myself thoroughly. And now that I have a little bit of a break, I feel like now is the perfect time to do that. That I actually have the time to think through and delve into my inner being of what is going on right now. So, I just realized I forgot my microphone, my little microphone, but I think it will be fine. You will just hear a bit more of the birds and such. So, maybe when I come back this way to go the other direction, I'll pick that up for the second half. Anyway, so yeah, first of all, I am so thankful to be able to be out here this morning. It's like not crisp, but it's like chilly, and the leaves are beautiful and stunning. I don't really have to do anything today. There were some really, really awesome things that happened yesterday that I'm very excited about. So life is looking positive. Like right now, this very moment, I'm pretty positive about several different aspects of several different things about life. But yeah, it felt really good yesterday to talk through more detailed about like how exactly I'm currently feeling, how things have gone recently, and sort of what the future holds like in the immediate sense. But I didn't take a look at like taking a step back about life. I don't know what would be a good name to call this type of situation. It's like when you get a midlife crisis and you're like, I don't really know what a midlife crisis is like exactly, but I imagine it's something like you're very introspective. You're thinking about how your life is actually going so far. Are you where you always dreamed of being? That sort of thing. So, yeah, wanted to think about that a bit. Maybe it would be something like an introspective journey. Something like that. Can't get over how beautiful it is around here. I'm probably going to be sharing the beauty with you because that's one thing that, like, when I'm a lot older and I'll be looking back on myself at these times, I'll be like, do you remember when I was here looking at the chopped hay with the beautiful fields in the background? And then on the other side, there's this bright tree that is just beautiful. Anyway, yeah, an introspective journey. I don't know. Maybe I'll think of a name. My subconscious will think of a name as we're going through this. Okay, so I did make an outline of sort of what I wanted to touch on. Let's get that out. An introspective journey of life so far and where life could go, and the I don't know. Maybe you could think of it as a post, so there's sort of some milestones in life. Like, in some respect, you have milestones of like getting through high school. I mean, obviously this is different for different people. Getting through high school, getting through college, and then like starting your first job, like early career, and then like getting married, having a family, that type of thing. And yeah, I think I am early career, but I wouldn't consider this an early career breakdown. I would consider this more like okay, well, let's just say that currently I am 23 years old. So it's like 23-year-old introspection journey of the past 23 years, like where I'm at in life, where life has taken me, and where I think life could go from here. This isn't going to be the most succinct video. It's going to be a lot of processing information, so I apologize about that. Can't get over just how nice it is. Like, this view with the straight... I just love when you can take these, like, this used to be a railroad and now it's a nice walking path. Like, beautiful, like, I get to appreciate the beauty of this walking path, mostly by myself, on this, one of the most beautiful days of the year around here. Where this used to be a train going by ever so often, so many years ago. And I personally think that's what's going to happen with all the roads around here. All the roads that cars currently travel on. I just don't see that as being the long-term situation. Okay. Eventually we'll convert them to like really beautiful, especially highways. They'll be converted to like really beautiful things. So, yeah, yesterday we did the exposition on like what life, how I'm feeling in life, what are the basic next trajectories in life. And I was saying I was feeling a little bit burnout, that I was still feeling like I was making progress. And then I sort of talked through the various internal conflicts that I typically face, or that I'm typically facing right now, and how I'm trying to think through a lot of those. But let's think more broadly, without getting into... I don't necessarily want to share everything about my internal being on the internet, but I wouldn't mind sharing the essence of some of those aspects, because the essence is really what matters anyway, because a lot of the specifics obviously aren't going to apply to a lot of different people. So this is where I've outlined a lot of this stuff before, I've thought through a lot of this stuff before, but it's one of those moments where I can just relax, think about where I'm actually at in life. Like, take a moment to slow down, think about where I'm at in life. So, I was born in a really, really nice family, raised really, really well and healthy, beautiful childhood on the farm, instilled a very hard work ethic with good morals, and generally the desire to help people, to be empathetic. I don't know if empathy is a character trait that you're born with or something that you sort of decide that you want to be, but I've sort of always noticed that my default is pretty empathetic. Obviously not perfectly or anything. I'm sure there's people that are a lot more empathetic than me. But sort of that combined air of empathy with like actually wanting to make something happen. Just seeing how there were so many people that talked about various things of like, oh, look at this huge problem, look at this huge problem. And then like, look at this solution. And then if you looked at the problem, you're like, that's a huge problem. Why hasn't anybody done anything? And then you look at the solutions that people have proposed, and they're like, probably not going to work out that well. Or they haven't, clearly. So that desire to sort of do actually something. And then I'd say basically, since I was a small child, I've always wanted to like build a city, like build a really great place to live, because I saw so many people who had to live in such rough conditions compared to me. And I was like, it's not really fair that I get to live on this beautiful farm, and like there's so many people who don't get to live on nearly nice of this types of things. And I was like, well, what if we made cities differently, where it revolved around people's like well-being? So that was one element. So the element of like imagination and inspiration, always sort of chasing that feeling of some of those epic books and movies and stuff that sort of inspire you. In general, just like trying to do the right thing no matter what, to like search after truth, which is why from a very young age I was challenging what the society and the people around me were telling me was the truth. At first you try to justify it, you try to say, you try to first you try to combat all possible objections to what you believe and to what you were taught to believe. And then when that doesn't work out, then you start to question your own stuff. And then when you're like, okay, there's definitely something wrong with my own stuff, so then you sort of can transition a little bit to different systems of beliefs. I don't know, I guess I'm in general like super happy with myself, I'd say. In general, always trying to do the right thing. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there is a green hill back here with like the leaves, and it's just wow. I'd say, yeah, I'd say wanting to do something, like wanting to make life worth something. Like the effort that I put in to like actually make a difference. To help people in a lot of bad situations, to sort of figure out what are the answers to life's really, really big questions. Yeah, I don't know. I keep wanting to show you guys the scenery, but it's like so beautiful. Okay, so whatever. Obviously, if I'm pretty happy with my childhood, I don't really feel like reviewing it too much. But it's still important to recognize, like, as a child, those are sort of the things I wanted to do. Help make the world a better place, like in reality, like actually make it happen. Help prevent really bad things from happening. So like, if there is eternal punishment after we die for some people, like making sure that we work to prevent that sort of thing. Or if there are really bad things that happen to people, in this life, like, yeah, working to prevent that. And yeah, definitely thinking through those elements. So, and that desire for imagination, I'd say I've always had this thing where, I don't know if it was books or like just growing up in households with certain, in a household with a certain religious belief, but like the idea of self-sacrifice for the community, for the world, has sort of been something that has, I've always sort of thought, so there was this one, like, a big part of my life I thought I was going to probably perish when I'm like 45 years old, that I'd have to finish everything important by that time. If I didn't finish anything by that time, then it was like I had failed. And that was sort of my idea of like, I was gonna need to work really, really hard, and then it was all going to end. And it wasn't like I was gonna have lots of time to finish everything. I don't know, it's probably just one of those childhood thoughts that you start to have, and you just sort of like, yeah, sort of like think through it. But I don't actually think that anymore. I think now that I've been exposed more to the longevity community, I'm more thinking that those thought processes were probably more about not wanting to live old and frail, wanting to just live young and then pass. But I think with longevity, it'll be much more possible to live younger for longer. And I think in that respect, that's why I've really taken that on, and that's what I've really been doing a lot of things to help with that sort of longevity aspect. But yeah, I'd say the idea, like, I've always been sort of prepared for needing to make big sacrifices, lots of sacrifices, to possibly like never end up feeling fulfilled in life, because, like, personally fulfilled, because I would be sacrificing my own desires for the well-being of humankind. So that's sort of been an element. I'd say a recognition that, like, you can make things happen. A lot of times we just sort of we end up assuming that it'll be impossible to like truly make something happen, so that would actually change the world. But I think that's essentially like a false belief, one of those things that's not actually true. Because a lot of times you can actually completely change lots of stuff. Like, the world can actually completely change. Anyway, as I said, very introspective today, and I think that's fine. Now we're going to have the sun in our eyes here. Maybe I will do this. Alright. I might bring up more aspects. So, I've always sort of known, like, in a similar vein to that life could become, like, utterly amazing. I've always, like, that's probably just because I was exposed to, like, the idea of, like, heaven and hell, where like things could get really, really bad, or like things could get really, really good. I suppose another element of that is that that sort of situation where where things are either really good or really bad, that can change very quickly. One simple, really big mistake and your entire life trajectory could be completely going down a completely wrong path. You completely, like, you made a mistake which caused someone to die that you loved, or like something major like that, and like your whole life just completely goes downhill. So that's why I've erred on the side of going easy on myself, like knowing that it's the long run that matters, not the in between. Like, obviously this is sort of I'm taking lots of pauses, I'm not really speaking coherently, I'm not really lining things up in a perfect order of chronological order or anything, where like at some point I'll be able to do that. But I'm not going to hold that against myself, because like everyone has to go from whatever they were born with to whatever they want to become, and that transition period is going to look awkward and cringeworthy, but it's a transition that has to happen. Now, do you have to put it online for everyone to see? No. But I think in today's world, it's so rare, I think, to have someone that has these sorts of beliefs, because a lot of times you get this competitive nature where people don't want to expose that when they're actually thinking, it's like, it includes pauses and it includes gaffes, which means like screw ups in what you're trying to say. People don't really want to expose that, they just want to present this perfect little image. So I think to show that to people, because yeah, like I said, very likely not going to be doing this. I'll be doing this personally, but not sharing this in some time. So I thought, while I could double up with making this count as productive and being introspective and taking the time to relax a little bit and think about life, that I would do that now, but probably won't be doing this again. Well, maybe tomorrow, the next day, but other than that, probably won't be happening for quite a while, if ever again. Probably never again in exactly this phase, where I look like this, where I think like this. I think I will end up changing quite a bit between when I'm doing this and when I'm doing it again. So it's not going to look like this again, very likely. Okay. There's like there's like a double-edged sword when you're looking at the leaves, is that they're stunning and you're just trying to appreciate them for all they're worth. But then you know that means that they're just about to fall off, and that they're going to be bare and solemn and during the winter time. Wow. Looks quite bright. Okay. So I've always known like life could become quite good or quite bad. Like, people sort of underestimate that. A lot of, especially, I've always thought there was something magical about like novels that had kids exploring a new world or something like that. Say like Narnia or some other situation like Adventures in Odyssey or some other childhood, like children exploring, because it's like everything's sort of new for them and they don't have a cap on their imagination. It's like everything can be really awesome and exciting. And it's like there's, yeah, like you never really know what's gonna happen, because like everything could change with this one little paradigm shift. The entire situation completely changes. Whereas humans, because they've seen or humans, adults, because they've seen the same things, they've sort of experienced a lot of what there is to experience. They know that when they're having a good time, that's not going to be permanent, that's going to go down again. Whereas children are like, oh, we're having a good time, like maybe it'll last like this forever. And like that childhood excitement, that's what I definitely had. That I definitely was like, why do adults put caps on like what's possible? Why do they limit their imagination to what's always been? It just seemed like adults were so boring in that respect. And I was like, I never really want to give up on my childhood dreams. The potential, the awesome potential for what I think life can become. I never really want to give up on that. And then I never want to give up. I never want to let it slide that some really, really bad things could happen. Like, I never want to forget that if I make one big mistake, it could screw up my entire life. I never want to forget that there are lots of people that are really suffering around the world. And there are lots of tragedies that have already happened, and that could happen again if we're not careful. I never want to forget that like lots of people could end up in this terrible place of punishment for eternity, and that depending on this or that, like it could be true, could not be true. So that's sort of definitely was part of my childhood thinking. That I never really want to forget those things. I never want to get lazy and just think, oh, it's okay, I'll let it go. Like there were some of those times in your childhood when like you're so excited, you think about the future of your life, and you're like thinking about how amazing it can be. Like you can just see how cool your life is going to be, how cool it could look, how like maybe you could find like an alternate reality like Narnia, or maybe you could build a virtual reality world that you could explore, ever ending in this sort of eternal sense of just like joy and happiness, but with that sense of purpose and fulfillment. And I told myself I would try to never give up on that. That even when life got hard and it felt like it was always going to be boring, and even the highlights were like, okay, like I'm in this beautiful place with the leaves, but like, oh, they're never gonna change. Like next year it's gonna look the same or a little bit worse, or like next year I'm gonna be older and then I'm gonna eventually die, and like there's no purpose to any of this. I think that's what I never wanted to have. I never wanted to forget the extent of that excitement that is possible. I never wanted to give up on that. Now maybe that's a fruitless thought, but that's sort of what I was thinking. So I've always sort of known that I can also become the epic person in, like, say you read a novel and you're like, oh, I just wish I could be that person, because they're like so cool, experience this cool stuff, they're like skilled, they're like doing the right thing even in the tough situation. And you're like, you never really want to give up on that aspect that you could become that person. Like and that's what I've always tried to, like, say if I'm having a day where I don't like the way I look, or I'm thinking to myself, I'm never going to be better. I'm always going to have this base level of intelligence. I'm never going to be able to solve any problems. Like, I just keep hoping that somehow things will be better, but it's like a totally useless hope. Like, there's no way that's ever going to happen. I try to tell myself try to believe in myself that I can actually become that person that like actually makes the difference. That like maybe I'm not like special, but like I help in some way that made a difference. Yeah, you don't have to be the hero of the world. It's just I've always known that I could become the person that could like do that epic thing that needed to be done at the right time, the right moment. So, yeah, I would say definitely lately, just because of the way life is set up, I felt a bit like I'm always going to be like this. I'm always going to look like this. I'm always going to talk like this. I'm always going to have this level of intelligence. I'm never going to be like actually say intelligent things or something. I'm never going to like be as cool as all the other people. But I guess that is a good reminder. I certainly can still become the person that I've always imagined becoming. And I'm not messing that up by documenting this part. I think that's one of those internal conflict moments where I'm like, do I document the phase in my life when I'm not all that I want to be? And then you realize, are you ever going to actually be all that you want to be? And so there's no real point in that. But like maybe you're like still like in some manner of time I'll be like actually pretty decent. And at that point then I'll document it, because then it won't be so awkward. And I think that is obviously true to some extent. But it's not like true to such an extent where it's like you really should not, like I think at this point, as awkward as I am and as foolish as my thinking is and as cringeworthy, etc., I still don't think it's the end of the world. It's not like I'm out here like trying to, I don't know, it's debatable though, like everything's sort of up for debate. If I was out here talking about how, anyway, I guess that's true. I don't know, but yeah, there's nothing really new anyway. Like, let's say I was out here solving physics, talking to, like, figuring out a new answer to physics while I was recording this. Like, that would obviously be super cool, but the odds that that's gonna happen are so small that it's like you wouldn't want to say to yourself you have to be someone that is like truly developing a new branch of physics in order to document the journey, or in order to just sort of talk about your feelings. Like, but I guess there is that aspect where like all humans' feelings and thoughts are sort of fair game. Now, whether that's interesting or whether that's entertaining or whether anyone would actually want to know, that's up for debate. But I think it's still like these thoughts are probably still more worthwhile than like some things. I suppose if it's entertaining, even if it's not worthwhile, it's still worthwhile in the fact that it's entertaining. Whereas if this is not maybe this is like more worthwhile, but not entertaining at all. So then it's like has zero actual like lovely value or whatever. All right. So that was that. So dangers I've always sort of thought about and wanted to make sure that I avoid. Meaning like big mistakes that I want to make sure I avoid. I sort of talked about this a little bit. Yeah, I definitely talked about this. But I really have this sort of core element in me where I do not want to be making big mistakes that screw up all of the effort and sacrifices that I've made thus far. Well, I guess I could talk about. I think I meant to talk a bit about what life could become, like, and then contrast that with the dangers of what life could also become in a dystopian manner. And this is where we get a little bit, we transition a little bit away to like, okay, what am I currently thinking at this stage in life as a 23-year-old with the background and the past year at least spent, although you could say a couple years at least spent thinking about like how to actually make the world that best place that you can imagine. And so I could talk about that for a bit. So what do I think the world could become? So yeah, so such a big topic. How do you cover that? How do you even start to think about that? I don't know. The best place possible. I feel like I repeat myself so often. I end up saying these things like best place possible, best version of yourself possible, best life possible, where best is defined in a logical fashion. But it's sort of, that's like a simple, easy way to explain it, which is why I end up often saying things like that. So life could become the best place possible, beyond the capability of imagining what it could become. Like, it could become a place so amazing that it's absolutely impossible to comprehend how life could ever possibly become that amazing. It's like the gap between, like, right now we're only really able to comprehend what our brains have seen before. It's sort of a prediction machine. There's not a ton of like, oh yeah, you can totally in fact, I do believe there's going to be a very squeaky fan up here. Very squeaky. So that might be by far super annoying. So I actually think I'm gonna get the microphone and take a little tiny break and I will meet up after we've passed the squeaky fan. Okay. All right, we're back. Made it past the really loud fan, so should be good. And we have the microphone, so maybe it sounds a little bit better. I'm not sure, but yeah, I would say basically how great life could become is sort of beyond our imagination. Like, that's sort of the way I think about it, is that I'm like, life could become not only like super duper amazing, like if we were to sit down and say like, I want to make the best possible life, and there was no limit on resources. It was like there was no limit to physics, nothing else. There was no logical preconceived rules. You could make your own sets of logic, all of that stuff. Like the best possible world. Like, you can imagine how if you had those abilities to change around logic, to change around physics, to unlimited resources, you can imagine creating like a really epic world. I've envisioned this several times. I don't know. If you can't envision that, it's okay. I guess that if I can, that either means I'm delusional, or that I guess maybe I can do something that other people can't as much. I don't know. But I suppose it's that level, but then it's beyond that. Beyond what it's even possible to imagine. That's how epic I think. I've always thought that like life could become someday. Life could become so adventurous, it's beyond our imagination to even comprehend how epic it would be. Life could become so fulfilling that it's like, you think back to your life before it was fulfilling at all, and you just it's just this like bottomless pit of like nothingness before you had a fulfilling life. And so that's sort of how I think. I've always had this idea that like life could become that sort of epic. And then you sort of have the idea that life could become epically horrible, that maybe hell exists, and not only does it exist, but everyone goes there, and it's worse than someone could possibly imagine. It's like so absolutely horrible that it would be impossible. It would be like, it would be as though, like, you can imagine a very painful experience. Maybe stubbing your toe times 10 all the time. You can imagine like that would be terrible, right? But then maybe you can't imagine 1,000 times that. Maybe you get enhanced pain receptors and enhanced ability to like refresh that pain in your mind. And like we can't even really imagine that. But yet like that's how bad life could become. If you had, say, people that like their only objective was to like increase the pain of humans, then you can imagine it would be possible to make it as like as terrible as you could think. Again, sort of using that analogy of like if you had all resources, if you could change logic around. I mean, you don't, the changing logic around is so far beyond what we can currently do that we don't have to include that. But if you had all resources, if you had all power to like make something happen. And then there's like this such a bad world that it's beyond that, the capability of even thinking about that. And I think those are the two main things I've always thought. Either one is possible. So we're gonna have to like actively do some trying to like make sure that things turn out one way versus the other. Okay. Then there's sort of the dangers. So I guess I should do highlights of the best world possible. If you had maximal resources and whatnot, would be everyone lives a great, like the best life that they could live. maybe they never have to worry about not living the best life they could live, because the world is sort of set up in a way where you just sort of naturally live this really nice life. Or, I suppose that sounds a little socialistic, I think. But yeah, highlights would be that, like, you're just living the great life. I don't know, do I need to explain this? It's like plenty of food, like you're constantly eating great, wonderful food. Your body feels really healthy. Your mind is like, doesn't have any issues with like feeling depressed or anxious or not fulfilled. It's like your mind is just doing fantastic. You look the way that you always have wanted to look, and you also don't have this aspect where you're like self-conscious about. Like, it's one of those things where people that go to the gym more often actually dislike the way that they look more and more, because they get more in tune with the little bits of themselves that they don't like. And so sometimes even the better you start to look, the more you start to think that you don't look that good. So like, that's what I'm saying, is like a world where not only do you look the way you've always wanted to look, that you look really nice, but you also don't have to worry about like all of a sudden being like, okay, I look good, but like I really don't like this part of me, or something like that. You have like great social lives, meaning that like you have lots of great friends and that sort of thing. Maybe you have great, like the world is generally in a peaceful state. Maybe there's like maximal exploration, so you can like travel around the universe. Maybe you sort of understand what's happening in the world, like things just make sense. Like you've eliminated most of the big problems and a lot of the big suffering moments. That would be a big one for sure. You just sort of like maximize having fun. People always get like, oh, like a hedonistic life would be horrible. But like, I don't think I'm describing a hedonistic life. It's not something where you max out all of these good things, but then it turns out that the good things aren't that great, and that your human brain sort of adjusts to like the good life, and you still concentrate on the wrongs or on the bad things. Like that's not what I'm trying to describe. I'm trying to describe a situation where somehow or another it was possible to move past that, and your brain can truly appreciate how much better your life is becoming. But then you say, but then if you're content with how nice your life is, then you're going to lose that drive to expand and to have a better thing. But I think that's a false dichotomy, so that you don't have to have one or the other. It's possible to have some element of both. Okay. So then you come to the dangers. So I guess I'll finish. So some of the steps along the way of the best world possible, it's probably going to involve AI, like massive unlimited resources, like people coming together in coordination, people moving past like sort of stupidity epidemics, like all of the false narratives and the air of competition and the desire for power, and like a lot of those pretty consistent human nature aspects will sort of evolve a bit. So that's going to be a big part of a couple of the big steps that I'm thinking are likely going to happen. And then you come into some of the real dangers that we're looking at, which could be like AI gone bad. Like if AI goes bad, it could create that sort of impossible to imagine horrible world. Because it could like learn how to like take our brains, put them into some computer, and then like turn up the pain receptors by 1,000,000 or something, which wouldn't be so epic. So some of the other dangers could be like you can never manage to get really powerful entities out of their situations, whether that be individuals in like government or politics or institutions, or that be like giant companies that just can't get past the idea of like making a bunch of money. And that's what I thought about the stock market is you think, oh, like I could invest my money in the stock market so that I can like have money to like do this or that. But then you realize that the money that's being generated by the stock market is actually being generated by those companies that we dislike so much, that are really just trying to get money. And we're like, I wish they wouldn't just go for money. I wish they would like do the right thing. And it's like, yeah, but we're like, that's what we invest in them to do. Now you could say, but like, I wouldn't mind making a little bit less money and they do the right thing. But like the vast majority of people aren't that way. They need to make the next paycheck. They just want to get as much profit as they could possibly get from the next situation. Okay, so those are a couple of the dangers. Say the world, like Earth dying would be a big danger. This is what I'm saying, like societal level dangers. There's obviously dangers personally, which could be like I make a really big mistake. I forget I forget all the hard work and sacrifices that I put into life so far. I end up like some really bad thing happens to me out of my control type of thing. There's these two buzzards sitting up there. All right. Wow, I only got through a couple points so far. Dangers I'm always thinking about. So yeah, personally, I'm always thinking about not screwing up with big mistakes, not, like if there's a possibility I can make a really big mistake, then I go ahead and make a little mistake. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna try to like completely avoid the big mistake. Or like basically the chances of doing the really, really big mistake are much higher than if you make a little mistake. So I guess I was literally just doing this. So I walked out of the normal little stone trail so I could not be directly underneath the buzzard. So it's like a little mistake of like going out of the trail. But by doing that little mistake, you're avoiding the probability of getting the big mistake of getting something dropped on me goes down. So that was ironic. I'd say watching out for people that are going to take advantage, like trust. My instincts for trust are such that I do not typically do much trusting. If there's the probability, like, because it's out of your control, you can't control whether someone actually does the right thing. You can only control if you do the right thing, which is why I rarely ever trust people. But then you're like, but I do talk a lot about how I think that the world could transition to something of coordination. instead of competition. But oftentimes it's the competition where it's beneficial to the parties, so then you can sort of trust each other because you're both benefiting from the situation. But I think that's, you could pretty much say that about coordination as well. Plus, like, it's not that I'm completely against trusting. It's just that we have to have better systems than what we have now in order to actually, in order for me to actually be like decently okay with what could happen. Basically, like, the world is mostly capitalistic right now in the world that I live in. And so even though I might set up like some socially good business with some partner who is supposedly going to do socially good business things, when things start to get capitalistic, when deals come in and all of that sort of thing, because you're still so much in that world where it could be massively beneficial to make the business more capitalistic or whatever, then the person is so likely to fold and go in that position because the benefits are so high. Whereas if you lived in a world where coordination was the benefit that you got, was the real key to success. If you lived in that sort of world, then I would be a lot more trusting, because I would know that it would be more difficult for someone to do the wrong thing because the wrong thing wasn't actually that beneficial to do. Okay, let's move on to the next thing, even though I could talk about that more. So yeah, principles I'm trying to hold on to is sort of similar to like mistakes I'm trying to avoid and dangers I'm trying to avoid. But principles I'm trying to hold on to, yeah, I sort of have talked about that, of like not forgetting that excitement as a kid, or not letting go of what life could become. Not insisting to myself that I'm going to always be what I am now, that I can never actually become this person or do these things in life that I imagine are possible. But I would say beyond those things that I talked about, probably, yeah, never worrying about the potential for regretting something. I never want to have to regret anything, which is why I've been in this like mode where I'm so utterly busy all the time. There's no moment where I'm not like, well, it's been slacking in terms of this, but in general the idea was that there would be no moment where I wasn't actively working on those goals, so that I could never regret anything, because I'd be like, but I was busy the whole time, wasn't slacking at all, because I was like actually trying to do the things. So that's sort of one principle trying to live by, is to always be doing the right thing and trusting myself and not going too hard on myself. I'm just going to start rolling through some things and not trying to exposition on them too much. Remembering that it's sort of evolutionary and human nature to want to compare against other people, but that you'll feel inferior to other people, but that's part of life. It doesn't actually mean that you're not going to accomplish the great things that you want to accomplish. It just sort of feels like it because you compare yourself and think of how you're not as good as other people. Always being humble and not acting like I know everything, like trying to sincerely question life and like what lots of people hold to be true, what I hold to be true, like always questioning those things, trying not to get stuck in any cognitive fallacy, whether that be sunk cost fallacy, whether that be like self-centered fallacies, or all of that sort of thinking. That I don't want to get stuck in any cognitive issue. What's another one? I don't want to. I always want to be questioning. But that doesn't, and I think this goes hand in hand. If you're always open-minded, you're more likely to be very considerate and detailed in all the various aspects of deciding whether one thing is right or the other thing is right. Essentially, you're going to have a higher degree of, what's the term for when you're being like very intentional about deciding between the truth of something. But I guess I just explained the definition, so you probably know. So I was running this one morning, and it's like really big, sort of almost riprap stone. And I was trying to hit like a certain pace. So I was just like running on this stuff. Oh man, it's sort of like, yeah, if you've ever driven on it or run on it, you kind of know what I mean. But yeah, walking on it is fine. You're being very vigilant in your analysis of the truth about something. Yeah, I don't remember the right word. I'm trying to think of the right word, but who cares? Okay, now any other main principles? I'd say it's sort of that idea of sacrificing now. I'm not gonna go out there trying to have too much fun right now. I want to try to sacrifice, and I've been doing that, trying to sacrifice like lots of stuff to prioritize what really is going to matter in 1,000 years, in 200,000 years. Like when I'm gone, trying to really prioritize that sort of stuff. What's next? I honestly have a whole written document on all the principles that I'm supposed to live by. This is just the next little bit of an exposition on some of the main ones. I think you get the gist though. I'm trying to live by the principles that any intelligent person would live by. So it's like, whatever that's supposed to be is what I'm trying to do. So, in 2024, that's like researching internet of what people think is the best thing to do in life, of how to be most productive, of how to not make big mistakes, of how to be truthful, of how to make a difference that'll last, or like how to do stuff that's not just going to last 5 years and then be done and then there was no point to really doing it, but rather to do stuff that will last long, long time. Like basically doing the stuff that actually matters. So that's next. I was going to think through areas I think I really need to work on myself. This will be fun. I get to critique myself. Critique is sort of the word I was thinking of. Critical thinking. I think that was it. Just because I'm open-minded doesn't mean I don't have a lot of critical thinking. I definitely have, I think a high level of critical thinking combined with a high level of open-mindedness are key. All right. Areas I really think I could improve. Oh man, so many. Can I just take a moment to say how beautiful it is around here? I mean, sort of gets you thinking about like how cool, like you kind of sort of get that air of like, oh, like ruins or something. But that's like a little bridge. You can see how red my hands are from the cold. A little like old bridge from who knows how many years ago in the, yeah, there we go. In the beauty of the fall weather. And then it goes all the way over here to the other side with the bridge. Anyway, it's so nice around here. So, would be the way I look, which is somewhat self-centered. But I still think there's so much I can improve about just like looking better. Even though I've always tried to tell myself that it doesn't really matter. Like in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter if you look like, let's just say, Chris Hemsworth, or if you look like Richard Dawkins or something. Like in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't really matter. It just seems like it does because humans are so oriented around sight. It's like what you actually end up getting done. Now, if what you end up getting done revolves a little bit around inspiring people, then you would want to probably look decent in order to do that. And so that's why I'm always like, oh, I need to improve the way I look. And it's true. But I think most humans struggle with this a little bit. Is that they're like, oh, I wish I had a different shape of this body part, or I wish I was genetically able to do this, or I wish I could groom myself in a certain way to look like this, or I wish I had the money to buy these certain clothes, or I wish I had the time to put on certain makeup or whatever. Or to work out, or to whatever. So that's the internal conflict, but in general I do definitely try to, or I think that's an area that I can improve. Certainly you can tell right now, that's an area that I can improve in, is to look a little bit better. So that just happened to be first. Let's think about other things. The way that I talk and express thoughts is, I've always thought it was okay to be like honest. Just like say actual true things rather than pretending to be this epic cool person. To be honest with myself and with other people. Let's see. What else? But yeah, I think the way that I talk could certainly be enhanced by, like, I guess when I say the way that I talk, I mean the way that I say the things that I do could definitely be enhanced. But then a lot of the areas that I think I can improve are mental. They're like the ability to comprehend a topic, the intelligence to understand this or that, the ability to organize thoughts in a way to communicate a message very clearly, the ability to think, to like be able to balance internal conflicts really well, the ability to there are some buzzards chasing off a hawk. I actually have an entire list of things that I think I could improve in. It's about 100 long, and I think basically I said I was starting out at 0 in all of them, and that I would try to get better at all of them. So I think basically every single area I could improve in, because I'm just a regular human, not born with any like particular stellar things going on. So I have room to improve in literally everything. But I'd say some of the main, so I guess I should boil it down to like the main ones, which is probably thinking a bit better, being able to deliver a bit better on the projects that I'm working on, being able to handle internal conflicts better, being able to relate to people better, improving. I don't know. I am doing pretty good, but I certainly think there's a lot that I can improve in. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's sort of where I stand is. I don't think I'm all too great at much of anything right now. And I still think I have a lot of room to improve. I'm certainly not too bad though in a lot of areas. In a lot of areas I'm doing pretty good. Like health, fitness, like researching, like productivity, like balance, like introspection, like honesty, like doing the right thing, character. I'd say character is one of my strongest points, I think. Now that might be a little egotistical of me, but I think it's a bit that way. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking. All right, I'm going to be back in just a little bit. I will see you later. All right, we are back. Still so honored to be out here on such a beautiful day. This stretch in particular of this area is just so beautiful. It feels like you're in a different world where you're, I don't know, maybe you don't get that feeling, but like just the grass with the color of trees, it's really hard for the camera to get it, but I don't know, it just sort of feels like I'm walking through a trail to, I don't know. It's often hard to express those types of ideas. Okay, so what's next? Oh, interesting. The status of my thoughts on religion, philosophy, politics. This is interesting. Okay, so why does that matter? Suppose it matters to do a check-in on like, okay, what do I actually think at this point? I'm sure at one point I'll look back and I'll be like, okay, yeah, those were good points, but this is why I don't believe that anymore. Now, I would say in general, my philosophy is that it seems like no one knows anything. No one really knows anything. And that anyone that thinks that they know everything is probably wrong. And so since we can't really know anything, we should not be assuming that we know stuff. And therefore, that sort of anything that involves faith is automatically out the window. In fact, you're really not going to believe anything. You're just going to say, I'm not going to believe anything, I'm not going to assume anything. I'm just going to act based on what is most probably correct, given all possible ways of analyzing what correct could be at any given point. That's sort of the general gist of in terms of philosophy. So that means, in terms of religion, that it's because I not only think that what is the best way of putting this? Essentially, going back to the main philosophy, because all religions are going to take faith to believe them, means that I'm not going to like put my utter faith and trust in any particular one, that it happens to be the correct one, I'm gonna always, and I still think this is gonna be true forever, but I think I'm always gonna have the open mind, which means if I'm always open-minded to like, okay, is this actually true? Then I'm never going to like be a religious follower of something or another, because I'm always gonna be like, I'm only believing this because it's like potentially the most true at any given point, but I'm not putting my full trust in it or something. Because if something else comes along, I will switch. So that's one component. I think this looks slightly better over here than over here. Slightly, although it still has my face in it, so it's not gonna look that great. Okay. Not only that, but I think that believing in some of these religious things get you in trouble. They get you depressed about whether or not to make the world the best place possible. They get you thinking that you should do certain things that really are not that important. They get you sort of in this air of judgment and thinking that you're better or worse or better off, or plus it would be terribly depressing if you actually thought that like billions of people were for sure going to hell. That would be depressing. Whereas I don't have to have that on my shoulders. I can be like, I don't know that it's true, it might not be true, and therefore I don't know that it's going to happen for certain, and therefore I'm not gonna worry too much about it. Whereas if I like was dead set that Christianity was for sure the right thing, or other religions were for sure the right thing, and that certain groups of people were gonna spend eternity in hell, I think that was the main problem when I was in those situations, that I couldn't really live with that. I was like, I don't think I can live with that a bunch of these people are gonna go to this terrible place. And then you get into the whole more detailed aspects of like, if you look at any particular religion, how it clearly seems that even though the main ideologies is that God cares or is loving or whatever, if you look at what's actually happening, it seems pretty obvious that that's not what he's doing. And then if you supposedly have free will to choose or not to choose, but it appears that he's not doing very good, then like you're gonna have to base your choice on what it appears to be the case, which is against what actually happens to be the case if you're believing it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've already sort of talked about that a bit. Now, politics. Right now, I think that politics does basically nothing in the grand scheme of things. I think it does decide the difference between this or that, but politics is not going to be the thing which takes us from where we're at now to the best possible future. I'm pretty sure. Okay. Should probably move on. What's next? Okay, my exposition on having the best life possible, of seeking after that and what that means, while also sort of balancing that probably means that you're going to be making self-sacrifices. I think I've talked about this in yesterday's exposition, so I don't need to get too detailed, but I would basically say that I truly think at some point we'll be able to get to the point where not only can you live the best life possible, but in living the best life you can live, that is the best way that you can help the world become the best place possible. Currently, it's not quite that way, where like to accomplish a lot of stuff, I need to go sit down at the computer, type stuff out, build an application, write some information, spend a bunch of time researching stuff, which is sort of against what a best life possible would look like. The best life possible would probably involve some aspect of being able to be out in situations like this quite a lot, although I think there is some essence of balance that you can achieve currently. And I think that's sort of where I stand, although I tend to probably err on the side of living a life that is a bit sacrificial of what I could conceivably live, my own best life possible. Sacrifice that in exchange for helping the society and the world, like doing what's actually really important, that will actually make a big difference in what's going on. Or, I don't know, I keep saying big difference, but a difference is the truth in all reality. Okay. So, yeah, I did talk about that a bit yesterday. And I did actually already talk about what I think the world could become. Oh. I think I want to talk more about the way the path that I think in general, it seems like from where I'm at right now, all the research that I've been doing about this or that related to creating the best world possible, I've thought and developed a lot of thinking around, is that the same thing? I've thought and developed a lot of thinking. Pretty sure those are pretty much the same thing. It's crazy how differently you experience traveling places at different times of day, different seasons, different weather, and different speeds, and different environments in which you're traveling. So, like if you were to bike this, because I've run this before, totally different time, and then I'm walking it now, and it's like completely different experience. And then you could be like talking, or you could be soaking it in like a mindful state or something. Okay. Oh, it smells so good. It smells like the fresh outdoors. Maybe someone's cooking, baking nearby though. Sometimes you think it's the outdoors, but it's really like the smell of a fire or something like that. That's like what really is like nostalgic feeling, and you're like, oh, that's epic. But yeah, right now it's like beautiful. I do kind of feel like I'm in this alternate reality a little bit, where I can just be talking to this camera. Who would have ever thought I would be talking to this camera that automatically tracks my face in this place where I'm surrounded on both sides by this beautiful lane on this trail that used to be a railroad a long time ago. This beautiful epic time of day where like I get the opportunity to be out in the day, like in a state where like I am happy with myself, that I've not only been true to myself, but I've been trying to do the best thing, and then I'm honest with myself. Okay, I keep seeing these cardinals too. Beautiful. Okay, let's continue. So, where do I think things are at? Do I think, okay, so developing AI is going to be a big step, which a lot of the world is already working on investing in, stuff like that, to make that happen, because obviously once you have that, it is sort of the ultimate wish machine, where once you sort of create AI, then you have sort of your solution to everything. So I think that is like one of the trajectories, and why I've been researching that so much, thinking about aspects like that. Like I've been creating a little bit of content, thinking through like, okay, how could we create randomized AI? How could we help to make sure that it's like aligned and like good AI? How could we make sure that the AI itself, like once it becomes conscious, that it'll have a great life? Yeah. So certainly a lot of thinking around that. And a couple different projects. I'd say in general, every project that I'm currently working on, I'm trying to integrate AI into. So like that's one aspect. But like specifically related to AI, I've thought about the idea of creating a benevolent factor, like a benevolent AI that's like only job, because like it's impossible for me to ensure that AI that's built is going to do the right thing in all circumstances. But because I have strong character and I know that in general I would always orient to doing the right thing, it's sort of that aspect of like you can only kind of trust yourself. So I've been thinking about creating a sort of AI that would be modeled and would be able to always be a benevolent factor. Thinking about designing robots, I'd say when thinking about and designing and crafting all of the breakdown of the best possible world in the future, a lot of that revolves around AI and how AI is going to integrate with all of those various components. We're quite high up here. So yeah, AI for sure. Thinking about the idea of coordination, I really think a big part of being able to accomplish things is going to involve coordinating, really bringing to life the coordinating mechanism. I have sort of delved into already the immediate sort of things in yesterday's exposition. So I would say long term, it's going to be making the coordinating mechanism happen, that entire force by which the best world, where best is defined in the best way possible, the best world is created and is ever evolving to whatever best happens to mean at any given point. So really making that happen, I'd say that's in general, and I think this has been a consistent theme forever, not forever, for at least the past 2 to 3 years of basically building the movement, which is like a different word for the coordinating mechanism, which is essentially the ecosystem by which people can come together to become the force by which the best world is brought about. Okay. What next? Alright, I think about now we can turn around. Alright. So, we get to experience all the way back. Hopefully this is a slightly better angle too, though it doesn't really matter. The odds that anyone is going to be watching this part of the video within the next 10 years, within the next 2 years is pretty low. Within the next 10 years is fairly high. And when I say anyone, that could include AI. Like a semi-conscious AI. But I'm just saying that because it's like, when you're holding a camera up to your thing and you're like talking about something, it sort of feels like someone's gonna watch it, but probably not. But it'll be there for when it really matters. Like when you really want to see something is when you really want to see something is often, so like basically like if you have an antique, you want that antique to be like as old as possible, sort of. like as old and as quality as possible. And I think that's sort of the way I'm thinking about it, is that this is obviously way early in the grand scheme of stages of where my life's going to go. But when I really want to know, like, when do I really want to go back and see what life was like? When it was just in the beginning stages. Just in those beginning stages when I was starting to craft the path that I was going to be on, the projects I was going to work on. Versus like later on when you're like already working on this stuff and it's like evident that you're going to accomplish, well, whatever it is you're going to accomplish. Like right now, I don't know. I'm going to try and I'm not going to give up. But maybe next year I realize that none of this is possible, and so I focus on just solving cancer or something, which would still be epic, but wouldn't be quite what I imagined possible. But yeah, like, basically what I'm saying is, or like maybe like the entire world sort of goes into a dark age for forever, and like none of this ends up mattering. But maybe it does end up that all that I imagine possible and even beyond that comes to life, and I'm able to be a part in some of that stuff. You're gonna want to know what it was like when you didn't know which one of those routes was actually going to happen. Okay. What were we talking about? I don't remember exactly, but we can move on to the next things. So the things that will end up determining how my life ends up, both that will be in my control and out of my control. So things that will be sort of out of my control will be the general world position, like if there's a giant next world war or like AI totally takes over everything. That sort of stuff is out of my control, and so that's going to be hard for me. Like I think I'm still going to try to do the right thing in the right situation. I'm still going to probably believe in like finding truth and like making the world the best place possible. Very likely. It's starting to warm up just a little bit, which is great because my hands are still freezing. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff out of my control. Like, does it even matter if I can think through everything that could screw up how things could work out for me that are out of my control? It's a good idea to think about them. That way I'm anticipating them. Because a lot of times it's like you're thinking forward and you're like, oh, I got this mapped out. If this happens, then that happens. Plan A, then B, then C, then D, then double A. It's like you got all these situations where you're like, oh yeah, I can make it. But the real trick is that something's going to happen that was completely out of your idea of what could happen. And when that stuff happens, that's when you really have to be good. There has to be some sort of tenets that you're making decisions by. And I think that's why it's like, I know that I'm going to try to do the right thing at any given point. And because I know that, whatever comes my way that's out of my control, I know I'm just going to end up doing the right thing. And so, if the world mostly perishes in a year, but I happen to be alive, I'm going to do whatever the right thing happens to be at that moment. So in that respect, stuff out of my control, I'm going to try not to worry about too much, but I'm going to try to become the person that is resilient enough that when things do happen out of my control, I can stay strong to my core and do the right thing. What else? So things that are within my control, that could really determine how my life ends up, is going to be lots of things. I don't know how to answer that question the best way, because, like, obviously, everything you do, like how your life turns up, what your life looks like at any given point, is primarily the sum of your decisions. And that includes, like, things that were out of your control that happened to you. Your reaction to those is how your life turned up. Now, because a lot of things are thrown at you in different ways and things work out in different fashion, and you yourself are determined mostly before, like, you didn't have a say in how a lot of the things that the way you are were set up. Because of that, then you have to just be prepared to go wherever. Like, the destination is not a predefined thing, or, like, I think you know what I mean when I say that type of essence is that, let's say your goal in 10 years was to become a famous opera singer or something, and you get to the end of the 10 years and you're not a famous opera singer. And, like, is it because of, is that the sum of your decisions that you made? Or is that the sum of the decisions you made combined with all the stuff that happened to you out of your control? And I think the answer is it's both. But because the stuff out of your control was going to happen anyway, / there is some element that the decisions you make end up determining what stuff does end up happening to you out of your control. But I'm saying the stuff, for the most part, you can't control the stuff you can't control. And so where you end up in terms of what you could control is a result of what you could control. Which sounds like a circular reference. So, yeah. Anything that I can control, trying to do that the right way is generally. Now, what are some major aspects of that? I say prioritizing selflessness, like all those elements that I've talked about, the tenets I try to live by, like doing all of those are going to determine where I end up. But if I set some of those aside because I want to take a shortcut or something, like that could be not good in determining where I end up or what ends up happening. Okay. So, this is going to be fun. Because this is going to be one of the last sort of expositions that I'm going to do at this stage, I'm kind of thinking this again as like this phase in life. The 23-year-old, sort of after going through the growing up years, like the formative growing up years, going through a good portion of years where you were sort of in charge of yourself, like through college and through your early career, sort of you were making the decisions, like where did you end up, like were you making good decisions, sort of looking at that, sort of looking at all the stuff, the research that you've been doing, sort of thinking through, like that's the stage where I'm at, and there's still so early in my life, relatively. Possibly, if we end up living a really long time, this could be a very small percentage, but it's so early and still so formative. Like, you don't think about it when you're at it, but like when you're 23, those are still like very formative time period. It may not be the same as when you're 17 or 12, but it's a formative time that will determine a lot of what ends up happening. The decisions now start the compounding, essentially, in terms of which direction you're going on. It's like the little bit of direction that you decide to put on the train is gonna, like, you could end up in completely different cities in a couple decades because of the direction that you started putting yourself on now. So anyway, that's sort of the phase of life that I'm at. So this is probably going to be one of the last major expositions of talking about that phase. Although it may not be. I just feel like I'm not going to be doing one of these in a week because I'm going to be repeating myself the whole time. So what things do I not want to forget about this stage? What things do I want, if I ever watch this again or something, what things do I want to look back and like kind of feel nostalgic about this time period? Honestly, I feel like I'm not going to be watching this because I'm going to be so cringed out. I'll probably get AI to analyze it and be like, okay, what things did I not want to forget? But who knows? At least you could see the leaves. You could like block me out, or maybe you could like AI me over with someone that looks really nice, and then you could just see the background. And then you could replace my words with like intelligent words, or like resynthesize my words. Create like a 5-minute video from this video. I mean, they're probably going to be able to do that with AI by then, I'm sure. They can practically do that now. Okay, so I have a list of things I do not want to forget about this time period. That freedom is very important. Various types of freedom. Financial, time, travel, so like location, like social, like philosophical. Freedom is just so important. I certainly am pretty free right now. I'm not bound to like overly permanent, like I'm bound to my family relationships, but I'm not bound to like any other types of relationships that people can be at this age. So like that's an essence of freedom that I still have. And then money freedom I don't really have that much of. I have a little bit, not much. And then location freedom, I definitely have a good bit. Not that much, somewhat. Social, a decent amount. Yeah, I'd say a pretty decent amount. Like clearly I'm making this, which is certainly an example of like putting content out there. The other internal battle I'm always worried about is that being this honest, it's going to end up working against me. Because like bad things are essentially going to happen because I was, like my words would be used against me essentially. Like something I said, people will go back and be like, look, when you were that age, you clearly wanted to do this horrible thing. And so that essence is still in you. And at the time you said that it was something that you grew up with. I could just see that happening. Even though you think, there's nothing I said that could be used against me. you're like, the world can change so dramatically that even the intent of wanting to do something the right way will end up being something horrible. So just want to get the word out there that I am not trying to do those things. Whatever that's worth. Whatever that's worth. I don't know. Okay. What are other things that I don't want to forget? That I do love the change of seasons around here, especially the fall time. If I'm ever in a different stage of life and I'm feeling a little bit depressed, just hold out until fall weather in Pennsylvania and go hang out there for a couple weeks and enjoy the fall weather and then enjoy the Christmas time or whatever. There's plenty of places that have great fall weather. So I'm just saying, the fresh air, it's just practically magical. I think very positively. The nostalgia of childhood is quite positive for me. And so if I'm ever like super sort of like, I don't know what can like fix, like I don't feel real or something, just go back to your childhood place or recreate that or sort of meditate on those memories. See, this is what I'm saying is the stunning part of this. Sort of traveling up this little hill, and it's like, it just feels like you're on a magical walk through the forest on the perfect time of the year. I can't believe I get to do this right now. And talk about stuff. Wow. So amazing. Look at that. Okay. If I ever need to like buy a property or something, this is a great place to do it. Buy a property right here. Go on this little magical trail every day. Winter, summer, whatever. Fall time, obviously. And I'd probably be okay. So that's what I'm saying is like, if I'm ever feeling like life can never get great, like, just come back here. You'll be fine. So I've kind of already mentioned this. I've, not in like a self-righteous way, but I don't know if that's by default self-righteous. I've been trying to, there's going to be bikers here, a bike race here tomorrow. They're going to be coming down this hill. It's like practically washed out. So I hope no one dies or breaks a leg or something. So I've been sort of trying to live up to myself in terms of sacrificing social time, being outside, food, freedoms in certain respects. I've been sacrificing a lot of that stuff to try my best to be doing the right thing, mostly oriented around making the world the best place possible. So I would appreciate it if maybe you've already made some mistakes. And like, I get it, stuff happens, but please just try to bounce back from that, because the sacrifices that I'm making now I'd like to be worth something. They don't have to be. It's just, it would be nice if they were worth something. Even if you end up making mistakes and they're worth way less than they could be worth, at least make them worth something. If you can, you know, it's fine. I'm acting a little depressed. You're fine. I guess I was just thinking about talking to myself in that sort of state, and I was like, oh, that would be horrible. Hopefully you will not be in that state. Hopefully. But if you are, that's okay. I'll obviously have to be okay with it, but wouldn't be preferable, but I guess still try to do something worth it. That was something I was not expecting to do on this walk, was think about it. That really hit me for some reason. Okay. You don't really need to have too many regrets about this period of time in my life. Like, there's not a whole lot you could think back and be like I personally am not too concerned about anything I've been doing the past year in terms of bad things or suboptimal things or like wasteful things. There really aren't that many. So if you're ever like depressed because you're like, oh, I wasted this time, I've not really been wasting this time, in my opinion right now. Now, you could still think that I am, but I don't feel like I am. And it's not like I'm sacrificing that much. I'm still decently happy, and I'm still decently feeling like I'm balancing. Like, obviously being out here and walking, even if I only got to do this, even if this was the only time I got to go outside, this would be like this would be worth it. This would be a balance enough. There are plenty of people that have like so much worse lives than me. And I think that was one of the other things that was on my list to talk about. Don't forget what life was like in this stage, where, you know, I was making those sacrifices, things weren't working out, I did not know what was going to happen. I had a lot of hope, but I wasn't necessarily, I also had a lot of logic, and so all the hope that I had, the other side of me with the logic was always beating up against that. And so at the end of the day, I didn't really feel hope. I felt like I should be feeling hope, but then I also felt like things very easily could not work out, and all of the things that I try to be positive about may never end up working out. Okay. What else? Yeah, that people are suffering. Certainly right now. There have been a lot of tragedies that have happened in the world, and there are a lot that are still happening right now that people are going to have trauma for a really long time. So I guess I just don't forget about any of that stuff. But yeah, certainly don't, I don't think you would do this, but if it seems like if you're just sort of getting a little bit too wrapped up in having your own nice life, just remember that that's not probably what's going to matter. What really matters is doing the right thing for the world. Yeah, I personally do not think I'll have to worry about that. But just in case, I'm not sacrificing right now. I'm sacrificing right now, I'm sure for somewhat of selfish reasons, so that I can have better better future, but it's in large part better future for humanity. Anyway, really feel like I'm sounding a little too self-righteous. I'm not really trying to. And if you ever enjoy, or if you're ever really depressed as well, remember how inspiring it is to be outside in these beautiful situations, to be reading a really good book. Like, if you're ever super depressed, just like go in the mountains and read a really good book, or a couple really good books, and like enjoy the outdoors. Like, in all odds, that's probably going to make things really decent for you. Okay. Now, some of the big, so I think I'm done talking to my future self, although I still think in general this is for my future self. Some of the big paradigm shifts that I'm predicting, not predicting, but I am predicting, but not predicting in the sense that they will happen. Predicting in the sense that they could happen. Like, I'm predicting that these paradigm shifts could happen, and if they happen, they would be paradigm shifts. So that would be, right now my outlook on life depends on, or like, is mostly around taking a pretty long time to get to the point where I'm able to build all of the things that I want to build. Taking a pretty long time to do that, because I don't, like, really, really great AI isn't going to be around for quite a while. But a big paradigm shift would be if really intelligent AI came out in the next year or so, and I uploaded my entire thought processes for all the different things I wanted to build, and then that AI was able to actually create them in a relatively short amount of time and bring them to life. And I'm pretty certain that if a lot of these ideas were brought to life, they would completely shift the entirety of reality for much of humanity. Otherwise, it's going to take like the effort to actually construct all of these things, which is what I'm currently thinking it's going to be, which is good. I don't want to be hoping that I'll be able to somehow bring everything to life in a couple of years. I want to be planning on it taking my entire lifetime and beyond that. And then I'll still always have to be working on it. Another big paradigm shift could be that something else like really good happens to me. Maybe it's I don't know. It could be a variety of things, though, I think, in my opinion. But like something really exceptional happens where someone is like, oh yeah, you know what? These ideas are decent. This person's character seems to be good and well-intentioned. Let me fund some of these ideas with no regard for like me having to have control. Let me just fund some of this exposition. That would be tremendously a whole paradigm shift. That's like the main resource that is needed to make some of these things happen. Because for the most part, I'm not dreaming up things that are completely impossible. Although there is quite a bit of stuff that is only possible with really advanced technology. But yeah, typically fairly practical about things. Another big paradigm shift would be if we pretty soon develop like something where everyone, like it becomes clear that we can sort of reverse aging and everyone can live a very long time. That would be a paradigm shift, because that would mean that all of my time frames would stretch out immensely. And I would now no longer be worried about like trying to get everything done in time, and therefore needing to make tremendous amounts of sacrifices to make that happen. But now I could be like, okay, if it takes 20 years to do this one simple step, then that's fine, and I'll go about whatever it is a little bit slower, so that I can do a balanced life thing. But that's not going to matter because I'm not going to run out of time super quickly. So that would be a big paradigm shift. Another big paradigm shift would be discovering aliens, like some other intelligent species, where they're like, yeah, that would be obviously a huge paradigm shift. With like, especially if they have like advanced technology, and like they've maybe created a sort of solved world, and so they're sharing that with us. It would be like, now, if they've created like a solved utopia, and then it would be quite straightforward to then they could be like, hey, here's everything you need to do. And then that sort of takes all the pressure off of us having to somehow figure it out. Like, they've already done it, they've already figured it out. Now, the odds that they would be even human-like and that all of the same problems are going to be there and blah, 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 somewhat unlikely. Another big paradigm shift would be that, like, the entity which created the universe, or sort of the creation of the universe, becomes apparent. Where perhaps it becomes apparent that the universe spawned out of nothing, and still though, I wonder, you couldn't necessarily believe that to be certain. But let's say without a shadow of a doubt, it's like shown that the universe popped out of nothing, and that the universe will end in nothing, and that there will never be purpose to anything that we do. That would be a paradigm shift, because now I still think I wouldn't put all my faith and trust in that. I still think I would be like, it still requires belief to believe that the future is determined and that blah, blah, blah. But if there was some like way that we like for sure knew that the world was absolutely going to be destroyed in a couple 100 trillion years or something, then like what happens between now and then, we're probably going to end up not mattering, and so that would get pretty depressing. Right now, that's what atheists believe, and what a lot of Christians critique, and what a lot of other religions critique, is they say, well, life has no meaning if it was created by nothing. And it's like, okay, just because it has no meaning doesn't mean you have to make up the meaning. Basically, then you're just making up the meaning. Now, maybe because I think it's not guaranteed that the world is, everyone says the heat death of the universe, but that's certainly not guaranteed at all, in my opinion. We know so little about so much of the universe that you can't guarantee stuff like that. So there's no reason to like put your entire way of living to like stake that on there. But yeah, maybe another. But yeah, let's say that maybe it becomes, maybe the creator of the universe, like actually exposes himself in like a real tangible way, and is like, hey, I messed up, or hey, this is going great, or hey, I can delete everything, we can start over, or hey, let me fix all the problems right now. I'm sorry, I was off fighting a battle and I needed to come back, or something. maybe the creator of the earth and universe is just that. Like maybe he creates, or maybe it creates universes and like planets to be able to feed its engine or something. And so we're sort of a little piece in that great engine, and then that engine is sort of that being which is fighting another being, and then those beings are part of a greater being. So like maybe one paradigm shift could be that we're in this infinitely layered thing where we're just one little cog in this utterly grand case of stuff. That would be really interesting. Okay. What next? It definitely does take a bit longer to traverse this when you're walking because it's so much slower. What's another paradigm shift? There's so many. I think that's one thing, is like, it's impossible to know all the paradigm shifts. And that's why I think you shouldn't get too depressed about, like, okay, there's only 5 possible paradigm shifts. At this moment, they're not very likely. Therefore, life's going to be boring for the next 5 years. It's like a lot of paradigm shifts you don't even expect. And so you couldn't have even imagined. And so when they happen, then it's like everything changes and you couldn't have expected it, and it happened in a time frame. So like, you shouldn't just assume that life is going to be boring or that life is going to be disappointing. I think that's another element that a tenet that I try to hold true to, is that I try not to assume basically anything, including that, or did I say this already? I don't remember. But I would say including, like, don't assume that life is going to be boring, that it's going to take a long time or whatever. Like, really open your mind to the possibility that things could be completely different tomorrow. Things could be completely different 2 hours from now. And it's all about preparing for when that happens. Being the person that will be able to handle that event, that will have mastered their current situation so that they can master the next situation. Look at that gorgeous tree. So beautiful. Okay. Maybe we should go back to the looks part. So, why do I have the long hair? It was because I had short hair for a long time. Well, all growing up. And I don't remember what exactly inspired me, but I was like, long hair is just so much more natural. And I feel like that's what I want. I want to, like, be able to be free in that essence and not follow, like, societal guidelines of, like, guys having short hair. I want to change the way that I look a little bit. I guess that's probably mostly what it was. Now, does it look good on me? Does any haircut look good on me? I guess that's the question. Doesn't matter if it looks good on me. Probably not. Probably mostly matters whether I feel confident and whether it's like preventing certain things from happening. And it also matters, like, do I feel like it's a way that I can express myself? So I think in those respects, I'm doing good on that decision of having long hair. But obviously it doesn't look that great. I could do some things to make it look better. Obviously that really does not matter too much, but I think that's a lot of the way with humans, is that a lot of stuff doesn't matter, but we end up talking about it. And that's how humans learn is by processing together some of the simple stuff. Although I personally usually avoid small talk, so I probably am not living up to what I just said there. So that was the outline of what I wanted to talk about today. I don't know when my memory card is going to run out. Probably pretty soon. I think I'm going to be back eventually. Maybe I could run the rest of this. This has been a really good time. I'm so thankful that I could be out here, that I could talk about this stuff. I feel like I've been able to do a decent job expressing how I sort of feel about this stage of life, what I don't want to forget, what I want to make sure I'm thinking about, so that I end up in certain places. All right, I think that's it. Maybe we could wrap up by talking about you. If somehow or another you're watching this at some point and you found some of this internal dialogue interesting, and you're like, you're trying to figure out how I went from somehow like this internal dialogue to what I ended up doing. Maybe I ended up doing something really bad or really good or whatever. Maybe you're analyzing this about me and you're like, you just don't understand. Like, maybe I've been talking a lot, but you're like, all of this has been gibberish. Like, he didn't talk about how he was actually feeling. And I think in some essence, there have been some things that I certainly have not been talking about. I haven't shared absolutely everything, but there's not a whole lot. And I can tell you what I haven't shared absolutely everything about. But all of that is in my journals. So if you want to know all of that information and you're able to get access to my journals, that's probably the best way to do it. But yeah, it's basically like stuff that I don't want to be on the internet at this point. So if someone wants to convert the journals at some point to something in 20 years from now, that's fine. If you happen to be watching this and it's not 20 years from now, it's like 5 days from now, you probably think that I'm crazy, which I probably would not argue too much about with. But sometimes that's what it ends up looking like. It looks like you're crazy, but you're really just way ahead of everyone else. You never know. It's hard to know. Okay. Have a beautiful day, a beautiful life. Bye-bye.